I just want to start by saying thank you. It's been quite a journey as we've gone through this process of. I launched my first book about a year and a half ago, and it's just such an amazing experience to go through. Today is really about a celebration of thanks and gratitude for all the people in my life who've made this a possibility, and this has just been an amazing journey. So over the past few years, we've done so much work. Our team has just been going in so many directions of building a software platform that is now software as a service, of launching this book, that today is the day where we're launching this book and putting it out there for everyone to see. And I'm thankful that everyone is joining and being supportive of that. We also got the podcast. And over the past 6 months or so, I've interviewed over 50 business owners, business leaders, folks who are interested in this concept of the intersection of people and process, enabling people to be successful, enabling your teams and enabling the people that we work with and that we live with to be more efficient, more effective at the things that they need to do. It's not always about money and efficiency and things like that, but processes make our lives better. If we have good, consistent processes, that makes our lives better. And so it's such an honor to be thinking about and to be sharing with all of you today these concepts of purpose and process and people and the impact that we can make. The vision that I've had, and you can kind of see a blurry vision here on the screen right now, the vision I've had going back years and years is one of helping provide clarity, helping provide focus, helping provide alignment for people who are struggling with conflict between departments, between people in our organizations, even sometimes in our personal lives or in our maybe faith journeys in our churches. The things that we look at, the processes that enable people to perform and get that clarity. And we need to really think about, what is our focus? What is it that we're focused on? What are the things that are blurry? Maybe if we're looking out into the distance, what's blurry? What's not clear that we may need to look at out in the future? And then what can we see that's right in front of us? And sometimes with the word optics, we're thinking about the focus on very short-term things, the things that are right in front of us. And sometimes we're focused on things that are way out in the future. And finding the right balance between short-term, between very nearsighted focus, and that long-term, bigger picture, bigger vision, that's what optics is all about. So going back a few years ago, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I was out on a walk. I was praying, meditating, just thinking, and this word optics came to me. Up until that point, I had been building out concepts and I'd been putting things together. But the word optics came to me and it struck me. Some people ask me, why optics? What's this all about? And there's really 2 things that optics does. The definitions are technical and people related, emotional. So when we think about the word optics, there are these 2 definitions. One of them, I asked this to a group just the other day. I was doing a training event and I asked the group, I said, how many of you took physics in high school? And like a few hands went up, and I said, and liked it. And there were a few hands that went back down. But this concept of the study of light, there's very technical things that need to happen in order for our organizations to function, in order for the people in our lives to do the things that need to happen. There's these technical elements of how the human body works and how our organization functions and how our billing department and customer service department and operations and service departments, how all of these things operate. There's these very technical things. And I want you to think of those as the study of light, the process type things that need to work. But there's a second definition to the word optics. And that second definition is the perceptions of people about a situation. And many years ago, when I first started getting into business and technology, I started looking at things very much from a process perspective. My degrees are in chemistry and finance. I'm about as geeky and technically sort of focused as a person can get. And yet I ran into issues immediately, very, very early on in my career, where if people didn't perceive that they wanted to change or that they wanted to do something different, the reality was that they weren't going to do anything different. No matter how good the technical outcome might be, the perceptions of people are so much more powerful when we're thinking about habits and behaviors. So this is where the word optics came from, this concept of the intersection of people and process, the technical stuff that needs to happen and the people and the perceptions of people about that. So a number of years ago, I was at a conference. I was at an innovation conference, and there was a gentleman who stood up on the stage, and I wish I could remember his name. He stood up on the stage and he showed a picture of a mechanical typewriter. And he was talking about the way we see things and the way we perceive things. And the story that he told was, he asked the question, how many of you see this as innovation today? Not in the past. How many of you see this as innovation today? And there were very few people, well, people kind of giggled, people laughed, people chuckled, thinking about, well, it was innovation back in its day. But he said, the interesting thing was that a mechanical typewriter was given to a group of third graders. And that group of third graders, they took it and their response was, cool. It's a computer that prints when I type and it never runs out of batteries. And you start thinking about that perception. And he said, we see things not as they are, not as the object is, but as we are. The perspective that we have, the perception that we have about a situation or about an object. We see it through our lens, through our focus. And I often go back to this mechanical typewriter example that most of the people on this call have probably seen one. Maybe some of us have even used one. I remember using one as a young child in my dad's office and playing around with it. And occasionally the keys would jam. Those keys that we would type out, they would jam up. And I'd get in trouble. And every one of us today recognizes something on this screen, and that's that QWERTY keyboard, the QWERTY. That keyboard was not designed to make your life more efficient. That keyboard was laid out in such a way that it would reduce the jamming of the keys. It would actually slow down the people who were typing during that time. And we still use it today, despite the fact that there's been massive advancements in technology and the way that we can type and the speed of our computers actually processing information. We still use today a computer keyboard that was designed in a previous version that was designed actually to slow us down and to slow down the way we're doing things. So I want all of us to be thinking about the perceptions, the ways that we think about the objects and the processes and the way that things go in our lives. The second thing is there's another story that I heard a number of years ago, which is about a rock cutter. And there was a man walking through a forest, and he kind of came out to a clearing, and he found these two men working, and both of them were chiseling away at rocks. And he went and he asked the first man, he said, "What are you doing?" And the guy looks up and he's sweaty and he's frustrated, and he's like, "What do you mean, what am I doing? What's it look like I'm doing? I'm cutting rocks." And then he went and he talked to the second person and he asked him the same question. Then the second person was also sweaty and he was also frustrated. But when he looked up, he smiled and he said, "I'm building a temple." He understood the purpose of what it was that he was doing. He was perceiving not just the technical stuff of, I've got to chisel away at this rock to make it look a certain way and the technical stuff, but he perceived that there was meaning in what he was doing. And this is what optics is all about. We've created a framework and a system that enables this intersection of people and process, enables the ability for business leaders and business owners and leaders of organizations to be able to look through a lens of this intersection of people and process. I find that leaders often get stuck in looking at one of two lenses. They either look at human resources issues and people issues and how am I hiring the right people into the right seats? And on the other hand, sometimes they look at process issues and they hire in process consultants and they process map things out and they look at the process itself. But it's really this intersection of people and process where the magic happens. So in your organizations, if you find that there's some misalignment and that there's lack of focus and there's this frustration of you've got your product that you're offering, and you've got performance metrics, and you might have people that are in the wrong seats, and you might have processes that are not streamlined or well documented, and you might have an unclear, unfuzzy purpose for your organization. The first thing I want you to be thinking about is this clear alignment of people and processes that should enable the performance of your organization, that should ultimately create value, the product or service that your business is offering, that ultimately fulfills some purpose. And that purpose may be getting enough profit to pay the employees and to contribute to society, contribute to your community, to provide for your family, for all those types of things. But this alignment of people and process is really the key to accelerating performance in organizations and in life. So some of you may have been familiar with that first book that I referenced. I launched a book a few years ago. I did it by myself. I self-published it. I went through it and put it out there. And I was very cautious. I didn't know if anybody would actually read the book. I didn't know if anybody would actually be interested in what I had to say. And so I was very cautious about launching it, about sharing it with the world. But that first book has a little story in it, and I would be remiss if I didn't share this story. Some of you, probably many of you, have heard me tell this story before, if you've been around me long enough, about this orangutan. I'm going to tell you all a little story here about this people and process and mindset. And this was many years ago. I used to teach with a PowerPoint slide that said tools, skills, and mindset. It's what's required to change. And it was the most boring slide in the PowerPoint deck that I had. And I was at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was sitting there and I was looking at the zoo enclosure with my children, with Kenton and Caitlin, and Ethan was born at the time, with our three oldest children. And I was looking at the orangutan enclosure. I was reading the story about, I almost said the name, about the orangutan who had lived there many years before. There's a big plaque on the side of the wall. And it told this story about how the orangutans kept escaping from the cage. And the head zookeeper was getting super upset. He was getting frustrated. Why are my zookeepers being lazy? Why are they not being able to go out and keep the enclosures locked? Why are they being careless and leaving the doors unlocked? And one day, one of the junior zookeepers was sitting at the orangutan cage, and he watched as the orangutan, one of the particular orangutans, went over to the cage and went over to the door lock, and he started playing around with the lock, and he started picking and playing, and all of a sudden the lock popped open. The door came open and the orangutan went out, and all the other orangutans followed after. And while my children were watching the orangutans and enjoying some time, I'm sitting there thinking about a stupid PowerPoint slide. This crazy PowerPoint slide that said, you need to have the tools, the skills, and the mindset. This is people and process. And what ended up happening with this orangutan was that he had broken off a piece of wire from up by the top. He had broken off a piece of wire from the cage that enclosed the light fixture. He had broken off that piece of wire, and he took that piece of wire and he went over to the door, and he unlocked the door with that piece of wire. And I started thinking about what we need in our lives as humans to think about the habits and behaviors that we have. You see, that orangutan, he had to have three things. He had to have the tool. He broke that little piece of wire off and he used that to unlock the door and pick the lock. He needed to have the skills. Only an orangutan would be able to do this. I've got a picture on here of a zebra, and we've probably all seen the penguins of Madagascar. And we know that the zebras would love to escape their cage and get out and run around and create chaos, but they're stuck in the cage. Even if you threw a set of keys to a zebra, he'd probably look at it, sniff at it, might even try to eat it. But he's certainly not using it to get out of the cage. He's certainly not using it to change his circumstances. Only an orangutan is able to do this. So the orangutan found a tool and he developed the skills. Nobody taught him to be a lockpicker. Nobody taught him to be a locksmith. He developed the skills. What it means that he developed the skills is that he went out and he figured out how to do it. And what that means is that he had the mindset that he wanted to change his situation. He was not happy just eating bananas and having someone clean up his feces from behind him. He wanted to get out of the cage. So he's had to have all three of the things. So when they found the orangutan and they tranquilized him and they set him down, they actually found that he had taken that piece of wire and he hid it up by his gum line. He had hidden it up by his gum line like a retainer, and because he didn't want the zookeepers to find it. So we think about taking away any one of these 3 points will disable our team, will disable people around us from being able to succeed, from being able to do what needs to be done. If we take away the tool, which is exactly what they did, they took away that piece of wire, the orangutan could no longer get out of the cage. If we're not providing our teams the tools that they need, then we can't expect them to be successful at what we need. The second thing is, even if we gave a key to a zebra, he doesn't have the skills. He might have the mindset, he might have the tools, but he doesn't have the skills. He's never getting out of the cage. And finally, if Fu Manchu was happy sitting and having someone clean up after him, he was content where he was. He had no reason to change, no interest in changing. He's gonna sit where he is, and he's not gonna change. If he has the mindset that he doesn't want to change, he's not going to change. So there's often this thing where we think about needing the tools, the skills, and the mindset in order to be successful. A couple of case studies around optics. We've been working on this and developing this. Really, many of the elements of optics go back 20 plus years in my career when I first started learning these things. I actually built a SciPoc. I know it's a wonky acronym, but I built one of these tools. I used one of these tools and frameworks with my sister-in-law years ago about the concept of piano teaching and the process that she had and the people that were involved in that. So this goes back decades of experience building into this software platform, building into this system. A couple of quick case studies. One of my clients, we did an anonymous survey at the very beginning, started the workshop, and we asked about their strategic planning and their alignment. And they said, we've got some misalignments here in terms of product and pricing and performance and processes. Definitely some misalignment. They were, not maybe badly misaligned, but kind of in the middle. And just a one-day workshop of going through the OPTIC system, you can see how much there was an improvement in this alignment between the teams, between the folks who were participating in the workshop. We didn't get to perfect. We didn't get 100% aligned, but that improved alignment to accelerate performance. A second case study, this was a client that I worked with for about 6 months. And at the very beginning, you can see on the left side here that we asked the question of the employees. We said, how do you feel in terms of being overworked and stress level, work-life balance, clarity of your roles? And they were pretty close to terrible. They were actually not excited to start working with me. They were not excited to start working with our team. They said, we're overwhelmed. We don't have time to document our processes and get aligned. We just are underwater trying to do the things that need to be done. And after 6 months of implementing optics, we didn't get to perfection. But you can see a dramatic improvement, 2 to 3 times improvement in terms of clarity of their roles by documenting processes and understanding the way people work, the work-life balance. Their stress levels improved and feelings of not being so overworked improved. Certainly it's not perfection, but it's all about making improvements. And this is from a general contractor we worked with. So over the course of a couple of years, this is a much larger company. We identified over 180 gaps with their teams, frustrations and misaligned expectations and unclear responsibilities and miscommunications that were happening. And over the course of a few years, 93% of those gaps were closed. Over 37 core processes, core work streams were documented with them, helping them to get better alignment. And I'll share, there was the general superintendent. I met with him at a trade show and we were chatting. And I asked him, I said, do you use this optics stuff? Do you get it? Do you see it? Or are you just doing it because you're being told by ownership and by senior leadership? And he looked at me, he said, I was so skeptical. When I first met you, I thought, what does Ryan know? He doesn't know construction. He's never built a building. But he said, I use this so often now because we got clarity around the people and processes and expectations, accountability and responsibility. And it's moments like that that make this all worthwhile. It's moments like that where I look at it and say, this is the reason that I'm so passionate about it and so excited. One final little case study. One of my manufacturing clients, been working with them for a number of years now, and they had a billing system issue. They had a billing problem. And I'll show a little visual here. They were like, hey, we've got these problems that are happening in our billing process. But when we started detailing out the OPTIC system, we started seeing that wasn't really a billing issue. When I observed the invoices that were being sent out and we looked through that, most of them were being sent out very efficiently, very effectively. But then we set aside some that we figured out were really, they had problems. But those problems went all the way back upstream. There were 4 different methods of order entry. There were 4 different methods of putting orders in the first place that would turn into this modification and manufacturing, make process, and the stock pulling from stock. There were all these frustrations were starting way upstream. The handoffs that happened between the departments were causing the chaos at the end. They didn't need to document their billing process. They didn't need to improve their billing process. We needed to streamline those things upstream. And so in a few months, as we went through and started looking at and knocking off the key things and standardizing that order entry method on the front, that handoff to operations is going better. The handoff from operations to shipping and receiving, that handoff all the way back to the customer service department to do invoicing, certainly not perfect. We're not looking for perfection. In fact, one of my favorite and best mentors in my life often talks about how perfection prevents us from doing better. Perfection prevents progress. So there's 5 steps that we've designed. I did this all with whiteboards and Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints, and we've learned to systematize it, and we're helping companies in construction and manufacturing and construction services and in the trades and subcontractors, manufacturing, distribution. There's so many different types of organizations and industries that are benefiting from the OPTIC system. So it's these 5 steps that I want all of you to be thinking about and looking through as you try to improve the alignment of people and process to accelerate performance. The first step that I take people through, we talk about the work stream that we wanted to fix or the work stream that's causing frustration. We'll talk about the purpose of that work stream, the scope of that work stream, and the gaps that exist today. Why is this work stream important? Why is the rock cutter passionate about cutting rocks? Why is this work stream important? The scope, where does it start and end? Does it start with order entry and end with invoicing? And what are the gaps that exist today? What are the frustrations that are not working? The second one, I referred to this little tool earlier, the SIPOC. This is the tool that started it all for me. This is a framework. It's an acronym. It stands for suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customers. And I'll say I built this in about an hour and a half with one of my clients a number of years ago. It was actually a diaper manufacturer in Shenzhen, China, and we built it in Mandarin Chinese on a whiteboard. Very simple. Suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, customers. Built it on a whiteboard in Mandarin Chinese through a translator. I don't speak Mandarin. I had never been in a diaper manufacturer before. But walking through this process with this leadership team, at the end of it, the owner of that diaper manufacturer, about an hour and a half, the owner of that diaper manufacturer looked at me and in English, he said, "You understand my business better than my people do." And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had never been in a diaper manufacturer before. I had ideas about how diapers might be manufactured. But in an hour and a half, through a translator in Mandarin Chinese, I started getting a picture of exactly where the problems were in his business. And he could feel it. He could understand it. It's this intersection of people, suppliers, and customers, and process that's in the middle of the framework. The next thing that evolved is this thing called QVS, quality, value, and speed. These are the performance expectations that we have, and an alignment in performance expectations is so critical for organizations and for teams. So it's this alignment of people and process and performance expectations this QVS, quality, value, and speed. When I moved to the Philippines a number of years ago, I had 200 people. They all had computers, and I was like, how do I know? They're all doing different operations. There's customer service and order entry and general accounting and controlling and just all these different departments. How do I have a common way of looking and organizing all the departments? And I developed this concept of QVS, quality, value, and speed. And I had every one of my teams put together a metric about how they defined quality, how they defined value or cost, how they defined speed or timeliness in their department. And this became the thing that enabled me to take some pressure off. At the time, I was having heart problems. I actually went and visited a Philippine doctor, and I went in to visit him. I had chest pain, and I went in to visit him, and I'll never forget the conversation. He said, "What brings you into my office today?" And I said, "Well, I'm having chest pains." And he said, "Well, tell me about your job. Is it stressful?" I said, "No, I manage a couple hundred people on night shift. It's great people though." He said, "Oh, how much coffee do you drink?" I said, "Well, I drink 2 Americanos every night. I go to Starbucks first floor, 2 Americanos every night." "How much sleep do you get?" And I said, "Well, I can't sleep. I manage a night shift operation, drink 2 Americanos every night to stay awake." And he said, "Well, how much exercise are you getting?" And I said, "Well, I can't exercise because I'm always tired because I drink 2 Americanos every night to stay awake to manage the people on this night shift." And he looked at me, and I'll never forget, this was the most impactful medical experience I've ever had. He looked at me and he said, "You seem like a smart guy. You're going to figure this out. You don't need medicine. You don't need tests. You seem like a smart guy. You're going to figure this out." This was a moment. This was a life-changing moment for me. As our teams grow, as our organizations grow, we need to create frameworks and systems for them to succeed. I was taking all of it on myself, and it just wasn't working. The fourth step then is this ARM, the accountability and responsibility matrix. Being able to clearly define for people who's accountable, what are they accountable for, who's responsible, what are they responsible for. And then finally, the actions, the execution, putting it into work. And this is exactly what the system is all about. So if you read the book, you're going to find out about the system. We've now got software and software as a service that enables organizations of all sizes really to start getting better alignment between people and process to accelerate performance. So I'm gonna finish with one final slide. I want to say thank you so much. I live in a place of gratitude. There is no way that I could have done any of this on my own. I've got an amazing team of people. We've got Audrey and Lisa and Kenton and Owen and Paul and Ian and just an entire team of people that's been doing just amazing work for me. My family, I couldn't be thankful enough for the patience that they've had with me. There are times when I get frustrated and I get stressed and I look at it and I say, I don't even know what's next and how we go through this. But I want to say thank you to my friends and family for the patience that you've shown, for the encouragement you've given me along the way. And I just want to say thank you to each of you for giving us 30, 40 minutes of your time this morning to be part of this book launch. I put in the chat where you can get your copy of OPTIC. It's available on Kindle for 99 cents today. It is available on paperback. If you do the Amazon search, it's also available in hardcover. So just want to say thank you to everyone for your participation. Thank you to everyone for listening in this morning. Thank you if you're willing to buy a copy of the book or buy a copy for friends or some other business owner or leader that you think could benefit from it. Any one of those things helps us to continue to promote this vision of OPTIC, to help people align people and process better, to make work be better, to make our lives and our businesses be better. So thank you everyone for your participation. I sincerely and humbly am thankful for everybody's support along the way.
Are you ready to stop bleeding money from your processes and eliminate frustration within your team? Learn the power of aligning people and process to accelerate performance of your team in the OPTIC book. Head over to opticsbook.com for your free copy. Register now and start leading with vision and clarity.